Good evening and welcome to the December 18, 2019 meeting of the Milton Select Board. Before we begin, please join us as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for that. We're going to begin tonight with a public meeting with respect to a comprehensive permit application we received for the Ice House property. And before we begin, let me just give a quick update. This application was received from Mass Housing, the state agency, on around about December 2nd. This is the first stage of a 40B process. It is the project eligibility stage, at which the executive authority of a municipality has 30 days to provide comments on the site eligibility. The Select Board is Milton's executive authority, so it is incumbent upon us to compile comments from town departments and from citizens and our own comments, and to submit them to Mass Housing. The deadline is typically 30 days. Because of the holiday season, we have been granted an extension through January 31st. So this is the first stage of the process. And this is in the nature of public hearing. I think we did the proper notice applications. We put the notice in the paper, and I think we met the public hearing requirements. But hopefully everyone had notice of it and is aware of it. It is my hope, because we have the extra time and because this is the holiday season, perhaps we'll have another opportunity in early to mid-January to have another public session where citizens can make comments. And because this is the holiday season, people may not have been available, so hopefully we can do this again in January to make sure we have all the comments and we can compile everything to prepare for Mass Housing. So. Again, the purpose here is tonight is to receive comments from the citizens for the Select Board to try to compile for our comments on this project eligibility status, which is the first of the 5 stages of this process. Goes from us after our now 60-day period. It will go to the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they will have their own process, their own public process. So. For our public hearing, just very briefly, the procedures that we typically follow for public hearings is we give notice, which we did. We gave notice in the paper of this inviting public comment. We make available the printed information. All of that's been online. If you're not aware, it's been online, and you can print it out, or we can have copies made at Town Hall if you want to come in and get copies of it, or if you want to send an email. I'm not sure if we can email it to people. But perhaps we can.
It's a PDF, yes, we could.
It's PDF, so if people want to send emails to Town Hall, if they want to email them to them, they can get it if they haven't received it already. We want to give everyone an equal opportunity to be heard. We have our own meeting tonight as well. So what I'd like to do, if possible, if you could try to keep your comments to 3 to 5 minutes. It's not a hard and fast rule, but if you can try to keep it to that, it will make sure we provide everyone with an opportunity to speak. So, with that, let me invite anyone to come up, and I think that's all. Did I miss anything? Did I miss anything? No? Okay. Well, let me invite anyone to come up if you want to put your name and address and tell us what your comment is. It's really not, and direct all your comments or questions to me, and then we'll do our best. It's really for comments. If you have questions and we do not know the answers, we'll give them to you. So.
Mr. Chair, if I might add?
Yes, sir.
During the walk last week, Mike Busby from Mass Housing, this board will submit a package on behalf of the town for this process, comprehensive permit. In addition, they're looking for public comment that will be submitted as well with this package. So anything that we hear here tonight, or any emails or letters that we receive will go in as testimony.
It's a good point, and so just what I envision is a document where we synthesize the comments and provide our letter, if you will, and also provide attachments, which could be emails, which could be statements, attachments to that synthesized document of what our view is of this project. So is that fair, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so with that, anyone, Mr. Callahan, do you want to start us off?
I thought there was a long list of them.
I don't know, I-
On the 40B, right?
this is on the
I just
40B.
walked in, so I'm just making. All right, Tom Callahan, 16 Orono Street, member of the Affordable Housing Trust, a member of the Housing Committee, town meeting member, but here speaking as an individual. Those committees have not talked about this, and certainly not representing either of those official committees. I was, as a town meeting member, a supporter of the commercial rezoning of the Ice House property. I live in the neighborhood. My wife and I look forward to the commercial amenities that were being proposed. I strongly believe we need a broader commercial tax base. I was disappointed when that project has, as we voted for in town meeting, hasn't gone forward, and would like to see that. That being said, I would encourage the select board to support this 40B. We are in desperate need of affordable housing in Milton, in the greater Boston region, in the state at large. Milton has not done its fair share. That is an understatement. We are at half of the 10% requirement that the state encourages each town to get to in terms of 10% of its stock being affordable. We're at 5%, as you all well know. And this would help. It won't get us there, certainly, or even close, but it will help. I'm certainly not an expert in development. Wouldn't pretend to think that 56 units is the perfect number for that site, but I think it is a positive use, both the affordables clearly, which is of strong interest to me, but also the market rate units, which, from what I've read, are more modestly priced than some market rate units in town, or many market rates in town, which seems to be $1 million and up for most market rates these days. So I think it adds much needed housing stock, and certainly the 14 affordable units bring something that we currently are lacking desperately, which is starter homes for first-time homebuyers of modest means. So that's my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Callahan. Tom actually reminded me of what I wanted to do. What I wanted to mention first was that, just generally speaking, this is a project that consists of 56 condominiums, 14 of which are affordable. It's kind of an L shape from the street, and then there's a parking garage as well. So that's if anyone hasn't read the documents, that's essentially what it provides for. Right. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheffield.
Good evening. I'm here tonight really to find out what was being proposed. That was why I came, and I thought this was for the presenters to tell you why they should be approved, etc. But I find this is a little bit different. I would say that the town went out of its way a few years ago to consider the property, to consider the options, to consider what would be good for the McKeans who own the property to make the money that they are due on it. And I think the town came up with a very good solution. I think that what was proposed, which was both commercial and residential, would be valuable to the town, would be valuable to the developers, and could be done. I think that I personally was in favor of that. I'm a town meeting member of going on 50 years, And I've seen a lot of these things come and go, and I'm very disappointed that this could not have been a project that came to fruition. I lived on Blue Hills Parkway for 35 years. I knew the McKeans. They lived there before I did, and they are real Milton people and have been. They conducted a business from the property for a great number of years, and they conducted it well. They were very, very positive contributors to the town of Milton. And I'm disappointed that what the permissions the town gave them, they were not able to accept and deal with. And I think that if additional minor modifications needed to be made, it could be made through the planning board. I just want to say that I'm disappointed, and I think that a 40B here at this location would be inappropriate. I think that the people in the general vicinity gave it a great deal of support. I currently live at Pine Tree Brook. We're right across the street, and we're enthusiastic supporters of it, and I think now that we're all have question marks, and I think that what was proposed was realistic, it was doable, and what we're being asked for now, I'm not sure, but I think it is a lot less favorable to us as townspeople than what had been previously approved. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Let me just mention one thing. In terms of the developer making a presentation, we scheduled this hearing when we thought we had a December 27th or January 2nd deadline, and now that's been extended. So, the developers will have every opportunity, if they wish, to make a public presentation. And as I said, we hope. I think we'll agree. We'll see if the board agrees, but we may have another meeting like this in early to mid-January, and maybe at that time.
Well, I wish I knew more, but my initial reaction was a great deal of disappointment, and I think that we afforded a great deal of time and effort to come up with something that was doable and would be beneficial to the town.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Mike Blackwell, 357 Blue Hills Parkway.
I'm sorry, Blockfield?
Mike Blackwell.
Blackwell, okay, yeah.
Will you sign the name? Oh, sure. I'm a member of the Bike Advisory Committee, but I'm here today just as an abutter to the project. My main concern with the project is the additional traffic that's going to be introduced into Milton in general and Blue Hills Parkway in particular. Blue Hills Parkway, even though it's fairly wide street, is very heavily used by cyclists recreationally going to the reservation. And also there are two large schools on the parkway very close to the site of the project. I read through the application that was posted online, and one of the claims they made was, in terms of traffic mitigation, was the accessibility by foot or by bike to public transportation and local shopping districts, and I think that is fairly incorrect or stretching the facts a fair amount. And the closest public transportation to the Ice House project would be Mattapan Square, which is a pretty long walk, and you wouldn't imagine people doing that very regularly. Shopping districts, again, you have Hyde Park or East Milton Square. Other than the sort of mini mart, what used to be Tedeschi's, there really is not that shopping districts close by to this project. So I would imagine anybody who lives there would have to access those by car and increase traffic. So I guess the point I wanted to make was in the application, they were claiming that shopping and public transport were easily accessible by means other than automobile, and I think that is incorrect and should be taken into consideration. That was my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Laura Kessler, 87 Robin Street, and Town Meeting Member Precinct 1. I went through this application for the very first time today, and I too thought that it was some sort of presentation. But if we're at the very beginning stages, then maybe we can just add in input at this point. If you would look at page 5, they list wetland area on buildable area calculations, and it's marked as 0. And further on page 7 and page 30, they say, are there documented state-designated wetlands on the site? Yes, Pope's Pond. And then further on in at page 30, they state that they check off, yes, the protection of sensitive land, including prime agricultural land, critical habitats, and wetlands. So that must be, or it could be an error on their part. I also wondered at page 9, there are 3 handicapped units, 1 market rate and 2 affordable. And I wondered if people knew, is that usual that there are so few handicapped units available? I mean, in a project of this size, I don't really have background to compare, but one of the things that's come up in other forums is the fact that our elders are being pressed by the taxes in the town, and this would also maybe enhance the opportunities for people to move into something like this, as long as there were sufficient number of units made available. I don't know what the cost differential is, but when we look at the costs of the property, I mean, the total sales revenue is over $23 million. The land is over $3 million. The building with their hard cost contingency is over $11 million. I'm not sure. Is there a $10 million expected profit? I don't know. And is that something where you could knock back the number of the potential units to have it not be as large, since the other proposal had fewer units? And if there are, even if there are fewer, would there be a possibility for more handicapped units? I also noted I thought it was pretty striking that everybody is supposed to be taking an Uber from the location, and they give 1.65, 1.68 parking spaces per unit, but it just seems sort of implausible. Just because I'm at 87 Robbins, I'm down around the corner, and yeah, it's kind of remote, that's why I like it. But in any event, if you would look at page 22, on the question, have any of the applicant entities failed to comply with provisions of Massachusetts law related to taxes, reporting of employees and contractors, or withholding of child support? That's a yes or no question, and it's not complete. And it should be. If we look at the chart in section 2, and it does come out so small, I really did have to use a magnifying glass, which I don't have with me today. But at the back, can somebody just tell me, the dotted line on the back, I think it said high chain link. I hope it doesn't. But does anybody know what this is? Like, is it, this isn't the after.
This is section
It is section 2. So it's this document, comprehensive permit site approval application, the ice house. Existing condition site. So this is what's there now. Along with the locations of the septic and all the rest of it, and just showing the heights of the building at 2.5 stories, going to 3 and that kind of thing. If we continued on with it, I just wondered further back then, compared to section 3, the first document, this is the finished section. Does anybody know what the wheels with it looks like a wagon wheel across here. Is there supposed to be, when they did a walkthrough, did anyone explain what the anticipated project would look like in the back? Is there access to Pope's Pond? Is it private?
access.
Do you want to answer questions? for-
If we can, I think.
Okay.
So I think two things. One is we can take the questions and then we can try to get the answers or pose them as
That's
part of our
fine.
comment.
No, that's-
Or if we know the answers, we
Right.
can. we
Just so
can-
they know what we're thinking.
Right. So also, the planning board looked at this and they started talking about their letter, which I believe will be in draft form up on their website, I don't think today. But, we've noted the things that you've talked about. But right now, there isn't necessarily access, but that would be something that we could choose to negotiate with them as part of mitigation.
Because
that's-
people thought with the first development, I believe, that there would be access and that there would be walking around the
Right,
pond
that
and all
would
of
be
that as an
ideal, especially if it
opportunity.
was ADA compliant, because
And-
we don't have a lot of those
Right,
kinds of
and then
lots.
that section in the middle,
Oh.
again, this is section 3, the first document in, where it's Village Green Gazebo. It's like the size of a postage stamp, that's it. And I just wondered, how big is that? It looks pretty small.
Yeah,
And then to the right of it, they show the open space required is 44,625, and the open space actually provided by them is 41,809, so they're gonna need a waiver for that. And then the open land requirement is 31,238, and the open land actual is 42,296. So I don't know if there's offset while you negotiate all that. And those waivers are found further in on the document. It's not paginated, so I can't refer you to, but all of the items that you're going to require waivers on, or that they're going to request waivers on, and that you're going to consider also as to the zoning bylaws, the wetlands bylaws, and the Milton stormwater management bylaw. And then further on in on the redactions for their purchase and sale. Not the first one, but further in, it looks like the amounts that they're redacting out already appear on page 2. And, you know, if you're asking for full transparency and discussion, I'd like to see what we're potentially saying yes to.
yeah, it was noted last night also that there are many discrepancies and there's a lot to clear up. So
But
I
we have to
appreciate
make
your being-
sure,
Oh, yes.
as always, that we've already got the airplane pollution.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have the traffic mitigation issue. We're going to have the traffic pollution issue. Any health and safety concerns with the children,
Absolutely.
the schools, the other developments on the parkway, that, you know, it can't be a speedway. We already have the speeding at night with the people, so I just want to make sure that people
Right, right.
know that we're definitely thinking about it, and I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kessler.
Pasqua.
Other comments? Mr. Sloan?
How are you? Joe
Good.
Sloan, 55 Concord Avenue. I was thinking on the drive over today, considering how much turmoil there is going on in the country, that it was nice to be driving to a place where we were all going to get along and we could speak and it was safe, and you welcomed our comments and welcomed us. So I really appreciate that, and I know a lot of us do. I was impressed with your conversation at your last meeting about this, even though it was very, very preliminary. I was pleased to be able to participate on the site walk, again, for the benefit of the public. That was a lot of town staff, our town planner, some of this board, Mr. Dennehy. It was just, I think it was a really great representative gathering. A few residents were there. A lot of questions were asked and a lot of questions were answered, those that could be answered. What struck me right off the bat, that to me, someone who had really worked hard with the planning board through that process that ended up at town meeting, for me, what signaled a change on that site walk is that we now have something that we didn't have through that process, and that is a developer. When the town struggled with that project and came up with that planned unit development, what was really, I think, challenging for everyone, regardless of what your perspective on that project was that it was an idea. You know, what town meeting really approved was a tool that a developer could use if a developer chose to create a development. And I think that as you have heard and as you expressed yourself, there are a lot of residents who are disappointed because they thought maybe that process was going to result in that project. And I think that it's helpful as this process goes forward to be as clear and explain in as many ways possible to Milton residents just really how that process went forward. And again, that it was an option, it was a tool that the town created to possibly facilitate development. We now have a developer. You know, the plan that's been put forward is the first thing we've seen. And you know, you'll look at that, and town boards will look at that and respond. The plus side of it, I think, for the town is we now have people that we can identify. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mr. Bosworth might be here, right? I was really impressed at the site walk. These are people that have some Milton connections. First impressions are very important, very strong, and I think that can only speak for myself on the site walk, but I think that the conversations were very positive. So I think that regardless of where this application goes, I sense an openness and a willingness to talk about where we are going forward from this, and I encourage you to support that, keep that conversation going, and keep us going forward. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Jeff. Other comments? Mr. Bdunia.
So, Joe Modugno, 248 Blue Hills Parkway. I was on the sidewalk too, and some things came up that might be worthy of thinking about. You know, people were concerned about the mass of the building, the shape of the building, and its the frontage and closeness to the parkway. I think people were generally supportive of the additional housing and the affordable housing, but the frontage and the closeness to the road. The shape of the building seems to be a concern for some of us. You know, I don't know if they're up for redesigning this thing. Another question that came up, and I believe I actually spoke with someone there who's one of the developers, some of the historic materials on the property, beams, old beams that were in the barn, that I was at the historical commission meeting that started this, I believe, when, back months ago. And that came up, that there are old beams and stone and stuff like that, and we were wondering if some of that could be saved or incorporated into something on the property that would kind of reflect and kind of echo the history of the place, the ice house business and that kind of thing. As far as the conservation lands go, I'm wondering, this is really a question, is when will the Conservation Commission weigh in on this? Is that something that's scheduled or something that will just happen at a certain point automatically? I mean,
It's not scheduled that I'm aware of at this point. It may happen during the ZBA process.
oh, I see, okay.
It won't I don't believe it'll happen during our 30 days, but I guess it may.
My very limited previous experience on the Concom, and our town planner can correct me if I'm wrong, but until we get a project eligibility letter, those kinds of things aren't scheduled.
I see, okay.
And that'll be at the end of our comment process. And so that'll be at the ZBA process, which is the next stage.
Right, but
And
if
then-
you have something to say, it would
Yeah.
be good to know what it is now.
Okay. Well, in the next stage, will the town of Milton have some kind of sense of the impact of this on the schools with the additional, with the number of proposed units is kind of high? How will that affect or impact the schools potentially? Is that something someone's thinking about or looking at, or the services in general?
Well, I think it's something that we can comment on.
Oh, yeah, okay.
As part of our comment. And then in the ZBA process, the Zoning Board of Appeals, I'm actually not, I'm not an expert on that. I don't know whether they would consider that or not. I don't know the answer to that.
Dr. Pavlicek is the point person for schools.
Oh, okay.
The town planner met last Thursday with the department heads to go over the comprehensive permit application and receive feedback from them. So Dr. Pavlicek is the point person for any impact on the schools that they may anticipate from this development.
So I anticipate we'd, as I said, include that in our comments. And then I don't know whether the ZBA will dig into that as well.
Should comments be submitted to DCR in particular, as related to the parkway and concerns about, the structure of the parkway itself, or will they weigh in?
I don't know if they have a voice in this.
But they
As a
could.
state agency,
They
I
could,
don't
we could solicit them for comments.
They will from a public right-of-way perspective.
Yeah.
I know the former commissioner had opposition to cutting into the parkway.
The median strip.
Right.
It may make sense for us to reach out to them. I wonder if it may make sense for us to reach out to them at this point and see if there's anything that we can wrap into our comments.
Mr. Chair, do we know if the application has been sent over? Well, we've been given, has that been given to DCR? Do we know?
Don't know the answer,
Don't know.
but we may want to make that, connection. So maybe we forward that on and ask them for comments. We can ask them, there's no reason we can't ask them for comments and incorporate them.
I'm assuming it's part of Mass Housing's checking of all their boxes.
Yeah,
that-
that's probably right.
Because the public right-of-way,
Yeah.
this property is off of one of their public rights-of-way.
So should we check with Mike Busby first,
Yes.
actually?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we owe him that courtesy.
And lastly...
Thank you, Mr. Majuni.
Yeah, just lastly, I've been walking those trails for years. I've been living there almost 20 years, through the woods and stuff. It's very wet in the spring, and I don't know what the classifications are. I know what a vernal pool is versus a wetland and that kind of thing. I don't believe there are vernal pools there. I think it is just wetlands. But who's going to kind of look at the water issues there, flooding issues and that kind of stuff? Is that something our Conservation Commission will do? Or does an outside entity do that, a state entity? I have no idea. The woods all behind there, literally, there are pools of water. And it's also a breeding ground for amphibians. I used to go down there and film it and record it for my classes when I was teaching.
Well, again, Mass Housing may have insight through the state environmental agency, Ms. Conlon?
But I think what we should do on that, Mr. Chair, is the planning director should be talking to the conservation agent at this stage of the game, and then the Conservation Commission will certainly have an opportunity before the ZBA to make their views known. That's what they did in the prior cases. But I think we should probably, and I'm guessing Bill Clark has already done this, but reach out to the conservation agent to see what comments they may have.
Right, because even if they stay out of the floodplain and they are outside with the proper buffer, runoff could be a real issue, and snow removal and things like that, so.
The town's conservation agent, Steve Ivis, was in attendance at the
great.
department head meeting,
Okay.
along with public works officials for the town.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. McDuty. Other comments? Yeah?
Katie Schmidt, I live at 62 Churchill Street, just down off the Parkway before the Tucker School. And I attended the meeting last night, and I was very pleased with the participation from the planning board and the understanding of the project, of what was written up, because it has inaccuracies in it. It needs greatly to be improved for us to understand what's happening there. There are measurements that aren't there. And one example is when they say that 15% of the land is going to be 7 or 8% is building and 7 or 8% is planning or parking, and you look at the picture, and that's not, it doesn't add up. I'd like to bring one comment forward from page 30, when they're talking about the ecosystems. This they got some attention last night that this could be greatly improved if we were going to use Pope's Pond there, if you want to make a path. But on page 30, they check off two things. One is the protection of sensitive land, including prime agricultural land habitats. They couldn't find anything else to check off, and got down to eliminates or reduces neighborhood blight. So we live in a blighted neighborhood and they need to improve it. So that tells you a little bit of the competency or the background of the person who's presenting that. They're really not knowing the neighborhood or knowing our town. And we need to get a much better presentation. And also the walkability. It said that there were grocery stores and that would eliminate people having to drive. Well, if you shop at the Milton Food Mart and 7-Eleven for your groceries, then you'd be okay and you could walk. But it's 25 minutes to walk on a good day, sunny and bright, from there to the Mattapan train station. So, and I worked hard last time, and I think we're going to have to work very hard again to get this to fit into the 2 football fields. That's 2 acres. And what's on there, you can't see what was underneath, because we all looked at that older building that was there with the house in the front and back and thought, well, then you just move that to the front of the property. No, that is smaller, I think, than what, but we never got any dimensions in their proposal about what size that is. So,
You mean the initial proposal, the one that was approved?
well,
Or
we
this-
could look at that too. You could look, you need to see what's there now, and they didn't put an overlay of what their plan to build on top of what was there. Then you can get a perspective or visual image of what it is. And also that you had the 10,000 grocery store or commercial in the old, and the
Right,
plan
in the-
with the
in the
ice
original.
house, which is, if you put in 10 housing units in there on that 10,000, you still couldn't get up to your 57. So we need that. And I'm a very visual person, so I was looking through it, and I thought, I can't get a picture. I went to the site also and walked through and kept asking questions, well, what will get leveled and how big is something going to be? And you need much more to get a good understanding of what's going on. So we'll be at it again, getting it to fit into what the pocket of property is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schmidt. Other comments? So, so I have two things. One is, do we want to schedule a further meeting in January, perhaps with some better presentation or a presentation if the developer wishes to, and additional public comment?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so we should try to figure out, I think our meeting in January is set for January 8th.
Correct. The 8th and the 22nd.
So is the 8th a good, is the 8th a good night to do it, just as we did tonight before our meeting?
I think so.
I think so.
And at that time, it might be too early for us to have some kind of draft for people to look at? Is that true?
Of our letter?
Yeah.
I don't think it's too early, but hopefully we'll have a working draft at
Okay.
that point.
Because it would be good if we had that for people to understand more.
Or at least an outline, maybe an outline with the major points.
Right, I think that would be helpful, as people were saying, there's not a lot to go on, because what there is not really accurate.
Right.
So,
Okay, so we'll set and we'll notice it as a public hearing on the 8th. We'll invite everyone back. Hopefully, we'll have some more information for you at that time. Anything more we get, we'll publicize and put up on the website. Second point that I have, and anyone else can raise any other point that they wish, is we talked briefly before whether we wanted some professional help at this stage, maybe to help direct us in our comments. The view of the board was not to. I just want to raise that one more time, since we have more time than we did at that time. Whether we want to perhaps consult with someone who has expertise in this area to help direct us in our response. So I just want to raise that again. There is the opportunity in this process for Mass Housing to have $15,000 for a consultant, but that's at the ZBA stage. That's at the next stage. The question is whether we want to do something at this stage. I tend to think it's a good idea if we could, and there are people who could help us. We do have existing litigation with 40B that I'll be reporting on tonight as well. And so given that, it may make sense to have just a little bit of expertise as we prepare a submission. But I welcome any comments. And if everyone wants to just say no, that's fine too, but I just want to open it up again. Ms. Conlon?
I'll support the chair on that. And I think it's probably worth seeking a reserve fund transfer to pay whatever the cost might be, since it would meet the qualifications for being unforeseen or extraordinary. I think it probably makes sense to have some professional advice to the board. We don't have many of these. We have had a few in the last few years, but we don't have a long history with this in Milton. And it may be that the consultant might also be able to help us in terms of, I think there are things in this application that we may support. I agreed with some of the comments that were made about, we obviously have a need for affordable housing, but there's also, the community spoke very loudly and clearly when they asked for some other amenities at this site. And if there's a way to engage in some kind of a negotiation or a discussion with the developer and try to improve this at this stage, I think that might make sense, rather than waiting for that to happen at a later date if possible. So I would support hiring an expert. And maybe we could come back with a specific motion, or if there's a proposal in terms of who we may want to think about, or maybe get some advice on who the appropriate person would be and take it up at a later date. But the concept, I would support.
All right. There are a couple of people. There's nothing, we don't have a fixed proposal yet, but Ms. Collins, do you have something?
Well, I've been reconsidering in light of the fact that we do have litigation, and that's a good point about the fact that we haven't had many of these. And as Ms. Kessler was pointing out, so many discrepancies. I think we could really benefit from that. And I think it could only improve the outcome. So my question, though, is if we take it up at a later date, when do we need to get this person? And if we're not meeting until the 8th, is that soon enough? So that's...
Yeah, I think, I think we should do something sooner rather than later on this, if that's the will of the board. And given the amount, depending on the amount, it may not be something that requires this board's approval. You know, it may be something within the purview of Mr. Dennehy.
For an RFT?
Yeah, it may be. I mean,
Could we make a motion for let's say, I mean, I'd be one if we could make a motion to expend $5,000, at least up to $5,000, to at least allow him to research this? Or 10? Want to go more? I don't.
Well, I mean, I think we need to
We
just,
don't have a
you know, we need to kind of identify what the expertise is,
yeah.
or who we're looking to hire, and then
Right.
look at the cost. But I think the cost is kind of secondary to who we would want to
Yeah,
hire.
Right.
so maybe we do this. Today is the 18th.
Said those days are going to go fast.
I know.
They're gonna go very fast.
If people are around, I have a couple of people that have been suggested to me, one in particular.
Okay.
I could circulate that, and perhaps we could have is it possible to have a brief meeting Monday morning?
Sure.
Monday morning?
We just need to have a quorum, so we
Right.
Right, all right, I mean, I
Yeah,
trust
do we have enough time to, I guess we have to post it early
You have
tomorrow
to post it
morning.
tomorrow morning, yeah, just so we can,
Early.
just.
8:30.
Yeah, 8:30, so just for that purpose, for the purpose of considering a consultant.
hiring a consultant. I can go with that.
All right, so let's set a meeting for Monday, the 23rd at 8:30 a.m. We'll post that tomorrow.
I might.
Is that okay?
Well, I have to take this out to the doctor.
Oh, okay.
So, but I trust the rest of
All right,
you. so
all
you'll
right,
come up
well,
with
we'll,
something
it sounds like
great.
we'll have a quorum.
Yeah, so, and I just think, just in base of three things that were said, and just things that, and this is a follow-up, this came up at Capitol today and a follow-up at last night's planning board meeting. Clearly the history of it. I mean, one of the things that, and it's one of the things we've struggled with, and one of our future things, the 4-acre, you know, trying to somehow preserve the history that's existed, and this is a historic structure, location. The second is the issues that have been brought up regarding transportation, busing, all those things, traffic. And thirdly is and this came from Parks today, you know, from a mitigation point of view, you're talking about putting a significant housing location in a place that directly abuts Post Pond and is, Mike heard this morning, Parks and DPW have both been advocating for some time for walkability of that neighborhood, similar to what Turner's Pond has. And perhaps we can put that into the mitigation discussion. And finally on that is that we have a capital project proposed from a resident of that neighborhood who's asked to, Northeastern has given us a plan to add an additional walking bridge that would make that entire loop. And I say this not just to the residents, but also to the developer. If you really want to try and enhance that neighborhood, these are things you should be looking at. That's my 2 cents.
All right, so we'll have a meeting posted for the 23rd. We'll have another public hearing on the 8th. If anyone wants to send written comments, Mike, what's the best way, what's the best email?
They can send them to me at town hall.
Zulus at Town of Milton.
Well, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. Our emails are on the website, so if you want to send something to the board or to Mr. Dennehy in written form, please do so. And we'll have another hearing on the 8th. All right? Anything else? Ms.
I
Collins?
just want to add, Mr. Chair, I know that we've got the developer here with us. You know, obviously, we want to raise whatever issues we think are appropriate to raise at this stage, and we have to vet out the issues and continue to vet the application and get the public input. But, you know, I think there's a sense among the community, who came through to me on the sidewalk, and among the board and some of the elected officials, that if there's something that we can really work towards here, towards a common goal, where you have something that works for the development, something that works for the town and the neighborhood, and that we can support, that would be a win-win for everybody, and that would be the ultimate goal here. So I would just encourage the developer to keep working with us, engage in a dialogue with us. It would be nice if projects like this would kind of come to us in advance as potentially as a LIP, where we could kind of support something, rather than being in a situation where we're responding now to a comprehensive permit application. But regardless, hopefully we can reach a solution here that will address the issues that people have raised tonight, but lead to some kind of a development that's going to give us some affordable housing, maybe some amenities if we can get anything back on the table, even at a smaller scale, and something that everybody could be supportive of. So that would be the ultimate goal, and hopefully we'll continue to have a dialogue and engagement with the developer.
And I can say to that point that the developer has expressed a willingness to continue to talk. And that will happen, so.
Mr. Swan's right. In this case, we have a developer who has a long family history. You know, part of the whole historic thing is he himself and his family. So I think that says a lot when someone understands the makeup and the character of a community from the get-go.
All right, anything further?
Might be excused, I'm going to run to fire
Yes,
station building.
Mr.
and I'll
Wells
come right
has
back.
another meeting, he's going to run over there for a few minutes and then come back, so.
Can you do me a favor? I would like to just text Brian Washington. Tell him about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all and have a nice Christmas.
Yes, happy holidays. Yeah. All right, on to item 4 on the agenda, public comment. Is anyone here for public comment? Anyone here for public comment? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, we'll go to item 4, which is discussion approval of the DPW Director, the stormwater update, and the FY 2020 rates. So this will be Mr. Berkeley.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having me.
Good evening, Mr. Berkeley.
So following this special town meeting where we revised the appropriation for the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, DPW has put together a rate recommendation for FY '20 stormwater rates. Just a little background on the rates. They have been unchanged since FY '18, so FY '18 to '19 there was no change in the rates, and FY '19 to '20 we're requesting the change in front of you. The method and the structure of the rates is exactly the same as it has been since the Enterprise Fund was implemented, taking into account the changes that we made in Tier 4 to be more equitable in FY '18. So essentially we did it the exact same way, and it's a very simply, mathematically a very simple way to do it is we take the entire impervious area in the town and we divide it by the budget, and it's a linear rate no matter what size your property is. It's proportional linearly, so it does not get more expensive as you get any bigger. You just pay proportionally to the size of your property's impervious area. So I can read, I'll just read down the tiers for the benefit of anyone watching. So Tier 1, we're recommending $38 for FY '20, Tier 2, $54, Tier 3, $74, Tier 4.1, $132, Tier 4.2, $248, and Tier 4.3, $508. And again, these increases are mostly due to the revised budget, which includes all of the changes from the solid waste contract that were implemented after the Maytown meeting associated with the yard waste collection and disposal.
And these were the fees that were approved at town meeting?
Yes, we did present these fees at town meeting, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
the fees were
Yes.
presented,
Yeah.
under the contract.
Yeah. So it falls within the board to approve the rates.
Yep. Okay. Questions, comments on the stormwater fees?
Can I have one more comment, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Dennehy?
So $50,000 of retained earnings from the Stormwater Enterprise retained earnings was used to mitigate higher rates. It was a decision that there was $137,000 in that enterprise fund retained earnings. It was decided that that would be a prudent number. We don't want to take too much out of that enterprise fund balance. So that $50,000 was used to mitigate it, and an additional $100,000 was raised at town meeting.
Right. And again, that was something that was presented at town meetings, part of rebalancing the budget. And that rebalancing the budget was approved at town meeting. So, other questions or comments on the stormwater fees? Mr. Farrington?
Chase, I'm curious, do you know roughly what percentage of the single-family residences fall into that Tier 4.3 category?
Yes, so that's the highest tier. So there are 86 properties
Okay.
of roughly
7,000
about,
residents?
yeah, 8,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
So there's very few, yeah, in comparison. So just, briefly on the history on that. So when we broke the fourth tier into 3 subcategories, they were grouped mathematically using an equation that groups them so that they're closest to each other and the furthest away from the other parts of the group. So,
How long
so the
ago
Jenks model.
did we do that?
That was in FY18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions on the rates?
Mr. Chair, there's a draft credit policy. Is that for discussion tonight, or is that?
I was going to take that after the
Okay.
discussion of the fees.
I just wasn't sure whether that was, okay.
Yeah, I was going to take that after the discussion of the fees. Any other questions or comments on the fees? All right, can we have a motion then?
I'll move that we approve the FY 2020 stormwater utility fee rates as recommended by the Stormwater Fee Advisory Committee as follows. Tier 1, $38, Tier 2, $54, Tier 3, $74, Tier 4.1, $132, Tier 4.2, $248, and Tier 4.3, $508.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. All right, so in addition, we received from Mr. Berkeley a draft stormwater credit policy. So
Yeah.
maybe you want to
So a little
walk
background
us
on
through
that. So when the Stormwater Enterprise Fund was created, a stormwater regulation was also created. The regulation empowers the board to establish a credit system. And I believe, I wasn't with the town at the time, but I believe it was something that the board pledged to look at for the residents. So the whole crux behind the credit system is an incentive for property owners to install stormwater controls that improve water quality and reduce the amount of runoff their properties produce, which helps the town meet its permits requirements when we release water into the water bodies. So it's basically an incentive that allows up to a 25% maximum credit on their fee in the form of reducing the impervious area assessment for that property. So we're not going to reduce our budget amount. We will have to redistribute that through the rates. So the credit policy, the way it's written, will allow people to apply, and their credit would become effective the following fiscal year because it is a zero-sum rate setting process. And just a little more background. So the credit policy is modeled on the City of Newton's policy that's already implemented and has been underway for a couple of years. The MAPC did a evaluation of several credit policies for similar towns in the Commonwealth and then similar sized towns. And we've reviewed that and feel that the Newton credit system was the best fitting for us.
So I'll just say initially, I think we'll probably need to vet this probably through our policy committee, but questions and comments, Ms. Collins?
That was my only request.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's the appropriate line here, is to take it through our policy committee and maybe reach out to some of the large institutions that this will affect to get their feedback on it as well. And some of the institutions that have expressed an interest in this before, I know Fuller Village and others have expressed an interest in this, so we'll want to reach out to them to get their feedback on it as well. But why don't we tee this up for the policy committee to review? Ms. Collins?
Chair, what about, we have had inquiries from individual homeowners as well, not just the large institutions. So what's the process, I guess, for giving them an opportunity to weigh in? Because I think there will be some people who want to be heard on this.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We could have a public hearing on it, and maybe we should, given the interest. Maybe we should have a public hearing on it. So maybe if we can move fast enough, it's something that we should move on, because it has been an issue for a while that hasn't been resolved. So I'm tempted to say, let's go ahead, Mr.
Can I ask a
Dean.
question?
Yeah, please.
Just, in case you might not know the answer to this, but Newton is larger than Milton.
Yeah,
right?
so Newton has about 27,000 accounts for their stormwater utility. A very, very low number of credit applications. I believe the number was 47 citywide.
Okay.
So.
That's where I was going with it. What kind of, based on people that have done this before us, would it warrant a public hearing? We have had individual residents come into town hall physically and dispute their impervious.
Right.
So I think that, to Member Conlon's point, there are some individuals also. I'm just wondering how far we have to go.
What we could do, oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Ms.
no,
Collins.
I was just going to ask for clarification, sorry, about when you say how far, public hearing versus some other mechanism to invite people in to comment, or what were you thinking?
We had one individual and one large development at our hearing, or our last stormwater meeting, last October, talking about the credit system, so. I don't know,
I see what you're saying.
well, I won't call that a perfect gauge on the system. That's why I was looking for some comparable numbers by communities that have a little ahead of the curve. But I'm open to anything.
So here's a thought. You know, we similar to what we did tonight with the 40B, we could schedule a public hearing at the beginning of one of our meetings. Maybe it's a little too aggressive to suggest the 22nd of January, but perhaps one of our meetings in February, after the policy committee has had a chance to vet this. Perhaps we could schedule a public hearing just before one of our meetings to see what kind of interest, and if we publicize it, and if we have a presentation from the policy committee to this board before that, then maybe that will generate the interest and the publicity, so that people who are interested will have the opportunity to come in and take a look at it and say something about it. So, Ms. Collins.
The other thing is, we've heard at town meeting and some of us other places, I think some confusion about the need for the stormwater utility and to comply with the permit, because there are people who believe that the state covers us and that we don't actually still have to do the work. So it might be a good thing to do in that hearing to really explain how the permit works and why we actually do need to do the work that we're doing under it. Just a thought.
Correct, yes. So Milton falls under the Massachusetts Small Systems Permit, which is a permit that hundreds of communities also fall within. And it was effective July 1st, 2018.
Right, but there's a little confusion about the Trump administration possibly saying that we don't need to comply, but I think that's a separate piece. I've talked to Hillary Waite on this and read the website over a couple times, and I think that there are pieces that have to do with groundwater that people are confusing with the stormwater systems, and so it would be nice to clarify that for people, because it's very technical.
Sure, yeah.
And I realize that some states are able to, or have elected to do things differently than Massachusetts has, and I think that's another point of confusion, so.
Correct, yeah.
Ms. Conlon.
So Chase, I was pleased to hear that you're modeling this on another community's credit policy, and the fact that it's Newton, which has a large population and has vetted this presumably, and only had a small number of applicants for it. I'm guessing we'd probably be in the same category, but at least it's a starting point, because we've had this question come up over the last few years. What about the credit policy? And that's been something we've been wanting to work toward. So thank you for the effort that you put into this, and you and whoever else at the DPW. I think this, we've got a good working draft here, and it would be interesting to see what the policy committee comes up with during their review. But I think we have a good starting point here. I'm glad there's some precedent for it, and working with MAPC or NEPRA, whoever may be involved in this, and may be able to give us any, if there are any examples from other communities. I think this is still fairly new. So thanks for your work on this. Hopefully this is something that will generate some interest and some comment from people. I think it's good in this case, since we've had questions about it for a few years, to have some kind of a public meeting. We may not get a lot of people at the public meeting, but I think we'll get some. So thank you for your efforts.
You're welcome.
On this.
You're right, it does encourage good housekeeping practices that will just benefit water quality overall, so.
Right, so we'll refer this to the policy committee in January, and with the goal of teeing this up for a public hearing at one of our February, prior to one of our February meetings. Does that make sense? Okay, all right.
Sounds good, thank you,
Anything
everybody.
further?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chase.
It's nice to not talk about frozen stormwater.
All right. We do have at least one of the people here for Governor Stoughton, but I know that Mr. Wells wants to be here for that, and he'll be back. So we're gonna move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is an update on our existing 40B litigation on Randolph Avenue. And I have that update, if I have it amongst my papers here. The history on this goes back a little ways. HDMW Randolph Avenue LLC applied for a permit to build on Randolph Avenue. Our zoning board of appeals approved significantly fewer units than were sought by HDMD Randolph Avenue. As I sit here, I don't remember the number that was initially approved by the ZBA.
I'm drawing a blank, 30.
Yeah, I think it was 30, yeah, 35. 35 units were approved by the ZBA. That was appealed by the developer, the owner. That was appealed to the Housing Appeals Committee. The Housing Appeals Committee found in favor of the owner for 90 units on Randolph Avenue. The town has appealed that judgment to the land court and is involved currently in litigation in the land court on that 40B application. And the purpose tonight is just to give a quick update on where we are in that litigation. The parties have filed briefs, and the remedy sought by the town with the land court, which is the appellate body, one of the appellate bodies, but it's the appellate body that the avenue that we chose above the Housing Appeals Court. The remedy that the town is seeking is for the court to reverse the Housing Appeals Committee's decision and to dismiss the developer's appeal, so that would send it back to the original 35 units. In the alternative, we're asking the court to remand the matter back to the Housing Appeals Committee to review the board's decision as required by Chapter 40B. The arguments that the town has made, the basic arguments that the town has made is, number one, that the Housing Appeals Committee lacked jurisdiction to review the board's decision, and there's some technical legal arguments that I won't get into, but our view is that the Housing Appeals Committee didn't have jurisdiction to review that decision. Number two, that the Housing Appeals Committee failed to engage in the analysis that is mandated by Chapter 40B regulations. And three, that the Housing Appeals Committee erroneously struck the board's condition requiring execution of a town regulatory agreement aimed at ensuring that the affordable units in the project be maintained as affordable in perpetuity. Those are the three core arguments of our appeal, the town's appeal. And the status of the litigation, as I said, briefs have been filed. There has been a request to extend, or to extend the time for reply briefs. The developer and the Attorney General's office have reply briefs due. Those initially were due, I think, it might have been December 23rd. They have asked to extend that through January 9th, and proposed a new schedule where their reply briefs would go in January 9th. The town would then have the opportunity to reply by January 24th, and that there would be a hearing in front of the land court sometime in February or thereafter, depending on the schedule of the court and the schedule of the parties. So that is where we are in terms of the litigation on Randolph Avenue. I don't know if there's any questions or comments from the board. And we will provide an update as things continue. It's all the filings are public with the land court, but not everyone reads the filings with the land court, so we'll provide an update, as we have it. But that's where we are now. The next major event will be the hearing sometime in February or thereafter. So that's that one. So that's item 6. If there's nothing further, we are up to, well, item 7 is Mr. Wells as well, so we'll defer on that for the moment. And move to item 8, which is the appointment to the Commission on Disability.
I'll move that we appoint Coleman Irwin of 120 Highland Street and Earl Fay of 45 Annapolis Road to the Commission on Disability to serve through December 2022.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just to thank them for their willingness to serve. This has been a hard committee to fill appointments to, so it's, and we're in need of some members, so this is good to have
Right.
some additional representatives on this committee. It's an important committee.
All right, anything further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 9, reappointments to the Sign Review Committee.
I move to appoint Paul Doherty of 8 Thistle Avenue, Lawrence Johnson of 8 Churchill Street, Douglas Sybeck of 30 Governors Road, Raymond Thill of 457 Elliott Street, and John Zikowitz of 245 Atherton Street to serve on the Sign Review Committee through December 20th, and Town Planner William Clark through June 2020.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you to all of those who are continuing to serve on the Sign Review Committee as well. Item 10, acceptance of the Mary M.B. Wakefield pilot payment.
I move to accept a payment in lieu of taxes in the amount of $10,000 from the Mary M.B. Wakefield estate.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Thank you.
Yes.
The Wakefield estate has been a consistent and indefatigable payer of pilot for many years, and a good example
Yes.
for all of our nonprofits in town. So, and one that we always point to when we're discussing this matter with other nonprofits. So,
And a wonderful gem, too.
yes, yes. So thank you again to the Wakefield estate.
I also think it's a very sizable donation, given the, their means and their funding, okay, in relation to some of the other nonprofits. So it really stands out. So I would like to thank them again for their donation. It's helpful, it's needed, and it means a great deal to us. So thanks.
I think we can say that Wakefield estate, with respect to pilot, meets their obligation 100%.
I would tend to agree.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 11, approval of common vitular license renewals for 2020.
I move that we approve the renewal of the common vittler licenses for 2020 for the following businesses: 556 Adams Street, doing business as Novara; B&D Ichiro Inc., doing business as Ichiro Sushi; Behind the Other Net; Coffee Break Cafe Inc., Hojar Incorporated, doing business as Mr. Chan's; K&K Kitchens, etc., doing business as Pond Avenue Pavilion; Caribou Coffee, doing business as Brugger's Bagel Bakery; Milt Dunn LLC, doing business as Dunkin' Donuts; Milton Fuller Housing Corporation, doing business as Fuller Village at 1372 Brush Hill Road; and Milton Fuller Village Corporation, doing business as Fuller Village at 1399 Brush Hill Road; Milton's Opus LLC, doing business as Steel and Rye Restaurant; Newcomb Farms, Peel Pizza; Spellbound Inc., doing business as Milton House of Pizza; Starbucks Coffee, number 7565; Stella's Luncheonette; The Plate at Milton Marketplace; Tino's Pizza; Welch Restaurant Management LLC, doing business as Abbey Park; and Wharf Street Restaurant Group LLC. Oh, I have a question about the latter one. I thought I read that they were going to be closing.
Oh.
Thought I saw something on Facebook, but it may be, all right, well,
We can approve it.
We can,
We
if
can-
we need to do some further research on that, we can do that.
Right.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? So just as a point, these are all of the, this is a list of all of the entities that will have licenses to provide food and drink in Milton. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 12, approval of 2020 liquor license renewals.
I move to approve 2020 liquor license renewals contingent upon the receipt of all necessary certificates required by Chapter 304 of the Acts of 2004, signed by the building inspector and the fire department as follows. American Legion Post 114. Do I have to read all the?
I don't think you need to read the addresses.
Good, thank you. Wollaston Golf Club, NPP Inc., doing business as Central Liquor Mart, Delaney Liquors Inc., doing business as East Milton Wine and Spirits Inc., Retail Package Store License, Craft and Crew, The Fruit Center Inc., Milton Fuller Housing Corporation, 1399 Blue Hill Avenue, and Milton Fuller Housing Corporation at 1372 Brush Hill Road. Is that right? The Blue Hill Avenue? Yep.
Yes,
Okay, just making
yes.
sure.
One is Blue Hill and one is
Yep,
Brush Hill, yep.
Just making sure. Wharf Street Restaurant Group LLC, doing business as Prime Pizza. Welch Restaurant Management LLC, doing business as Abbey Park. Milton Opus LLC, doing business as Steel and Rye. Hojarn Inc., doing business as Mr. Chan's. 556 Adams Street LLC, doing business as Novara. Lombardi as Enterprises LLC, doing business as The Plate at Milton Marketplace. B&D Ichiro Inc., doing business as Ichiro Sushi. That's it.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 13, approval of 2020 Sunday opening permits.
I move to approve requests for Sunday opening permits to sell alcohol between the hours of 10 and 6 p.m. for the following businesses: Delaney Liquors, doing business as East Milton Wine and Spirits, Esprit du Vin, NPP Incorporated, doing business as Central Liquor Mart, and the Fruit Center Incorporated.
Second.
I
Motion.
did have one question. So,
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Farrington.
Esprit du Vin, 25 Central, and then Craft and Crew, 25 Central. So is one, it's a liquor store, it's a package store. I just didn't know the discrepancy between the names.
Right, I thought the name changed.
Yeah.
It is. So if you go to, it should, well,
Craft and Crew.
right.
Right.
Should be
Right?
Craft and
That's
Crow.
what it
Craft and
says.
Crew succeeded Esprit Event.
Right.
Right, so, but we don't want to be giving a Sunday opening permit to Esprit du Vin because it doesn't.
Well, let me check the permit. It's possible it's just wrong on the agenda. We can sort it out. I just didn't know if
Yeah. no,
that
it's a-
was there for a reason.
No, it's a good catch.
It's a
Yeah.
good point. That's a very good point.
Bear with me, one moment.
Is this for the, was this a request just for the holiday season, or is,
These were the Sundays. The holidays are coming up, I think.
Okay.
It's Craft and Crew on the Sunday.
is that the legal name?
Well, the legal name is actually Bin 98.
Bin 98 LLC, doing business as Craft and Crew at 25
Yeah.
Central.
Oh,
So do you want to make a friendly amendment to that? or-
I'll make a friendly amendment to supplant Esprit du Vin with Bin 98 LLC, doing business as Craft and Crew.
so do we have to go back and redo the other motions?
The liquor license renewal?
Yeah.
That's correct, that's Craft and Crew.
Right, but we didn't get the whole name, does it matter?
We might as well clean that up. We can go back and clean that up. All right, so now the motion has been made and seconded. It's been, a friendly amendment has been accepted. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's go back to item 12
Okay.
for the liquor license renewal for Craft and Crew.
Do we need to reopen it?
I think we can, well, let's see. I'd hate to, I don't want to reopen, I don't want to list them all again. So if we approve the motion for Craft and Crew, it'll be hanging out there if we don't. We're going to amend, I guess we reopen it for the purposes of amending. Yeah, we need to reopen it.
So
Yeah.
if we reopen it for the purposes of amending, do we read all of them, or do we just do it so we can have a friendly amendment?
I think it's just the amendment. We're
Right.
going to reopen it for the purposes of an amendment.
Right.
Katie, does that sit with you?
Yeah, I
If
think
we
so.
reopen it for
Craft
the
and Crew is
purpose
the
of
business
amendment?
name anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all right. So let's get a motion to reopen the approval of 2020 liquor licenses for the purpose, renewals for the purposes of an amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the motion has been reopened and for the purpose of the amendment. Do I have an amendment? Well, I'll make an amendment to the motion to approve the 2020 liquor license renewals, amending Craft and Crew to Bid 98 LLC, doing business as Craft and Crew. That's the amendment.
Second.
Amendment's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
What happened? Is this just a technical thing?
Technical
Okay.
thing. Technical thing.
Aye.
It was the name. We had the name, we had to fill in the name. All right, Richard, we're through item 13, which is the approval of the 2020 Sunday opening permits. We can go back now to, what we intended to do, and that is to recess the Board of the Selectmen meeting for the purpose of calling to order a meeting of the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust to accommodate our building commissioner and also our Flair Affordable Housing Trust members who
Yes, who aren't here right now.
all right.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I'll have can I have a motion to recess
Make a motion to recess to enter an executive session.
Not executive
Oh,
session, just to recess the Board of Selectmen
For
meeting for the
governance.
I'll
purpose.
make a motion to recess the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Second.
Motion been made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Governor Stoughton's Trust. And our first agenda item is a discussion of the men's alms house up on the town farm with Mr. Prondak. Mr. Prondak, thank you for waiting.
Hi, Joe.
So, as a background, the trustees approved, I think last month, $15,000 to board up the alms house. And so we wanted to get an update on that before the weather gets bad. And then anything else that you want to tell us about the alms house?
Joe Prondak, Building Commissioner. So we had some early proposals, just at the same time that we had the proposal to tear down the barn, to board up the alms house in the range of $12,000 to $14,000. With further review with myself and Mike Dennehy, we thought it might be a good idea to also, to try and do something with the roof, because the roof is, it's got holes in it. And so we thought we would reach out to the contractors that gave previous bids and ask them to also give us an additional price on putting some sort of a top or something over the roof. And one of the contractors came back and said, you know, he did look at that, and it's a complex process, and probably couldn't be done for the additional $3,000 that was approved. So now we're back to just boarding it up. So we have two bids on that. We tried, from two local contractors, we tried to secure a third bid from 3 different board-up companies, specific board-up companies, and 2 of them did not respond to me. One of them responded to me on 3 separate occasions saying he would be out to give us a price and never has. So I think we're at this point would rely on just the two bids. One was just over $12,000 and one was just over $13,000. And then I was also asked to give an opinion on the condition of the building, which, again, boarding up the windows will secure it from vandals, but it will not stop the deterioration, and the deterioration of the building is significant now. And it will continue to get worse. So I guess the question has been raised as to whether or not it's worth putting that money into boarding it up when the building is going to continue to deteriorate.
Questions, comments? Mr. Wells?
So my first thought is, well, the boarding up is, and I was there 3 days ago. I've tried to go up there every week. It is in serious condition. Boarding up the windows will prevent, vandalism access from getting in, but it's not going to, that hole in the roof, particularly on the left side, I mean, it's like gaping, like you can,
Yeah.
it's not they're significant and they're only going to get bigger. Was it a year ago, Melinda, we were in there? Was it just over a year ago?
A little over a year ago. It was like maybe a year and a half.
At that time, the experts who were there with us, because my hope had always been to somehow rehab it, were that they thought it was beyond any help, and now it's gone another almost 2 years. My just biggest fear is that it's not, I mean, it's tough to police, it's not a place where it has no real, other than when the animal shelter's open, there's no real pedestrian traffic, there's no vehicular traffic, it's almost got that open invite to come, and I just worry that it's a disaster waiting to happen. That's probably the public safety background in me thinking that way. It's a recipe for trouble, just as is.
I guess I would add, too, that the hole in the roof on the left side, the most significant one, the rot that has occurred in the roof structure has also migrated down into the walls.
Right.
So that, and also the holes that are in the sidewall, so to speak, at various locations has also migrated down, and there are portions of the main sill of the house that are rotted out. And I can't imagine what, I have not been into the basement, I don't think I would even go in there, but I have to assume that there's further damage in the basement to the structure, just based on what we're seeing.
Can I just ask you, Joe, you mentioned that it would cost more than $3,000 to tarp the roof or cover the roof.
Yep.
Did you get any kind of an estimate or a suggestion on how much it would cost to do that?
I did not get a specific estimate on that,
Okay.
because the contractor just clearly said it would be over that, and
Okay.
we thought it best at this point not to even ask him to investigate it further. It's a high roof, it's a complex roof, and the other thing too about, it might not have been such a great idea to begin with, because you're putting a top on a roof, 1 or 2 windstorms could easily take it off and require us to, hire somebody else to go back and secure it again. It was just a thought to somehow mitigate the damage that's happening to it.
Other comments, question? Ms. Conley?
So I had the same question. Joe, I'd like to get that estimate and find out what it will cost, so I'd like the board to, to get that information. I am in favor, we took a vote on this previously, we authorized the amount, we have the 2 bids. I'm in favor of moving forward with this post-haste and getting this done, and I'd like to get the estimate for the roof. I think until we make a decision on what we're going to do with the remaining 4 acres, we should be looking to secure those assets as much as we can at this stage.
Mr. Wells?
If I thought you had mentioned to me that the contractor, this was part of the problem, was actually even hesitant to even wanted to try even top the roof, that felt it may have been a futile effort to even do it.
Right, he did mention that there's a safety concern
Right.
of putting anybody on the
On
roof,
that
so
roof
that
and
all of
doing
it would
it.
have to be done with area lifts, so they'd have to bring in that type. It wasn't just a.
Right, it's not
I
easy,
fear
it's not as
gonna-
easy as boarding
yeah,
up a
It's not going to be a
window.
minor
Endeavor.
additional cost, it's going to be significant.
Right.
Ms. Collins?
Well, so you don't think it's safe to go in the basement? It's not safe to put somebody on the roof? I'm just wondering what that really means for the future of the building. But I agree, it is a public safety hazard, and we don't want people going in and out. So I don't really see how we could get around boarding up the windows at this point. But I guess my question is, how long do we have before it starts falling in like the barn?
That's a difficult question to answer. It's, once the rot that the building has experienced now starts, it progresses at a faster rate. So the more it rains, the more water that gets in that building. So at least the left side of the building, I would say, in a year or two is going to be significantly worse than it is today.
Okay.
And then possibly posing another hazard, an additional hazard,
So-
a potential collapse hazard.
Right. So if we wanted to see what we could do to preserve the building, it sounds as if a tarp may not be our best solution. As you pointed out, the wind could probably take it off. And I'm wondering what sort of the next stopgap measure might be, short of re-roofing it, which doesn't sound like it's even feasible because of all the damage that has migrated downward.
Right, coupled with the fact that it is a slate roof, so it's much more difficult to work with than a standard asphalt shingle roof.
Right.
So I think, to short of tarping it, I mean, you'd first have to secure the holes structurally so that it would be safe to work on. Likely have to strip the slate off. And the question would be, do you want to strip it off in a way that material could be saved? And then, if the roof structure itself could be made safe, then perhaps it could be covered with a rubber roofing material as opposed to a tarp, an actual adhered system. But again, the cost is significant.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wells?
So my last final question, because I was much like my colleague Katie in the beginning, but the more I look at it, I don't know, I just don't see it. Every day it's just eroded more and more. What do you think it would cost if what would a developer even have to put into it to make it a two-family, it would have to be million, I just can't even imagine.
Certainly upwards of 300,000 or more.
Just to even make it inhabitable, as is.
Yeah, I mean,
it has more.
that may be low. I mean, based on the prices that we're seeing today for home renovation are just astronomical, like none I've ever seen before.
Wow. I don't know. I don't want to throw bad money. That's my only concern. If the inevitable, I love the history. I mean, I told you today, I mean, I've been going in that building since, I think the Dillons moved in there when I was like 12 or 13 years old. It's just, I don't know.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Conlon?
So the way I view it is, there's a public safety issue right now. That's why I think it should be boarded up. It's an asset of the trust. We haven't made a decision on what we're going to do in the 4 acres. We have an item next on our agenda that we may, want to have further, we'll have some discussion relative to the property about. I think right now, the obligation is upon us to get the information as to what the tarp would cost or what the alternative would be, because I think we're operating on incomplete information here. I mean, Joe, what you've said is helpful, but when you say the cost would be significant, is that 10,000? Is it 100,000? I don't really have a sense of that. If it's 10,000, I'm maybe inclined to want to support it. If it's 100,000, probably not. But I'd like to know I'd like to get some hard information on that rather than speculating. And I know you're giving us good estimates, but I feel like we're speculating as a board. So I'm in favor of, I don't know if there's any vote we need to take since we've already authorized this, but I'm in favor of getting the additional information as well as moving forward with the boarding up the building.
So,
I don't do
oh,
the
Mr.
boarding
Wells.
until we hear from on the top. If he comes back and says roofing it is like Casey, if it's a $50,000 or $100,000, I mean, it's just. But it is. Joe's right. You go look at it. It's significant. This is easily to the naked eye that you could.
So is it right to think of it this way? We're investing $13,000 in this property to preserve to preserve it for potential use and to forestall any public safety concerns, right? So we would do that immediately to forestall, or to mitigate any kind of public safety issue with people going into the house. And then, to the extent that we preserve it, perhaps it could be used again, but even if it isn't used again, perhaps the developer would pay for the demolition. So it seems to me it may be a good investment. The alternative, if we're talking about demolition because of the state of it, now would be a significantly greater cost, it seems to me. So perhaps it's worth moving forward, seeing what an estimate we could get on the TARP, and then seeing how things progress in the spring, but keeping a short leash on it. Is that the right way to think?
What I would add to that, Mr. Chair, is it's not only a public safety issue, it's also potential liability to the trust if somebody gets injured in there or something happens there. So I want to move forward with that boarding up. I would hoped it would have been done a month ago. I know we had some trouble getting the estimates, but we should act sooner rather than later on that. And there may be, even if it does at some point turn out that it's not reusable. Well, there may be pieces of it that are reusable, or there may be parts of it that, we just had a resident here talking about beams and stones, the Ice House property. There may be valuable parts of the building. I don't know. I don't have any expertise in that area, but it's possible that there may be some potential partial reuse of it. So I think we're speculating until we really have some information as to what it could be reused for. And I would just like a little more hard data in terms of the roof costs.
Any further discussions? Any further questions or comments? All right, so it sounds like we're going to move forward with the boarding up, and we'd like to get some information on at least covering the holes.
Sure.
And then we'll keep a short leash on this. Mr.
I
Wells?
just want one caveat. If you can't get someone to cover that roof, I just want to throw the boarding money away. I think we have to come back to this. That's my, if we find out from Michael next week, hey, it's for $100,000, that I think we need to, before we spend that. So we need to do this quickly.
But we've already voted it, though, Richard.
Right, we already
So
voted
you'd
that
have
we
to
were
make a
going
motion to reconsider the vote,
to
because I think
do it,
we've already
right.
authorized the chair, if I remember the vote correctly, to approve up to $15,000.
Up to $15,000.
Right, because we do know people are going in there.
What do you think?
We've had complaints from neighbors at Quistit Brook.
Right, so.
I don't think we're looking at 100,000, certainly.
Okay. I'm all right with it.
And there are two aspects of it, the public safety, immediate public safety need, and then beyond that, how the building's going to be used in the future, so. All right, any further discussion? All right, so Joe, if you could get us
put
some
the message out
information on the
tomorrow.
roof and get the thing boarded up so we can at least prevent people from going in there and mitigate the liability, that would be appreciated.
That'll happen.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Okay, thanks, folks.
Thank you.
All right, so are our Affordable Housing Trust people here? All right, so item 3 is our executive session. So do we want to have a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make the motion. I think you have to take the roll call. No,
Yeah.
I think you have to, yeah.
I can make it.
I think the chair has to make it.
I'll
You
move
have
to
to make
enter
the
into
motion.
executive session to discuss strategy with respect to the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property, specifically the town farm, believing that having such discussions in open session could have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board. The board will return to open session the trust will return to open session to continue with the meeting after this. This is a roll call. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
So we are going into executive session, and we will be back, here. We'll move. You can stay here. We'll move. We'll go into executive session, and then we'll be back, hopefully not too soon. Thank you.
Bring anything with us?
And we are back from the executive session for the meeting of the Governor Stoughton Trustee, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting of the Governor Stoughton Trustee.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And so now, we are returning from our recess of the Select Board meeting, And we will go to item 7, which is our update from the Fire Building Committee Liaison, Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just a brief update, they're actually meeting simultaneously at the same time we are tonight, they're working very hard. With regard to project, 3 things, they're very close on their having a design for the headquarters project that I think they'll probably bring to us shortly. There is an RFP out for bidders to submit interest in the East Milton site, which went out, when did it go, last Wednesday, Michael? And that'll be out for 30 days?
Yeah, the
That'll
register
be out
is
for
on
30
Wednesday,
days.
so the 11th.
There is some dialogue going on, I don't want to be too premature, but there is some dialogue going on between the chair and a potential landowner in East Milton that could be perhaps an ideal location, and for anyone who's watching at home, it's not the max, so don't have a heart attack.
This is the chair of the Fire Building
Chair of the Fire
Committee.
Station
Yes.
Building Committee, yes. And I'm very hopeful for that. This is what I would call an ideal location, and I think it would be a win-win for all of us if we can bring this to reality. My big concern, and the thing that Michael and Amy and I have met, we've talked about this in Capital, we've had numerous discussions with Dan, is trying to make sure that this project lines up with Article 35, is the Hurley Amendment, as far as funding, so that we're able to fund this project from a taxpayer perspective, only using that project and any other monies, maybe a little bit of free cash for something, or and any donations or grants that come with it. That's the goal, and I reiterated that to them again tonight, and I report that to you tonight, and that has been, now that may require some juggling. I know that the architect, their intention all along has been to build headquarters first. Given the way the monies on the diminishing debt on the Early Amendment work, that may not work for them. In the end, it may, but it may not. And so what I've said to them is, you need to have a B and a C, And even in the discussions in this RFP, they know that the East Milton location, if they are successful, will probably be second, but could be first. Could be first, just given dollars. To you, is I really want to make sure that this stays within that, now, it may be more than $25 million, a couple of million, I don't know, because one of the differences, the more you push it out,
Right.
that's where the inflation can really bite you, and that's why I'm hoping that we don't have to push it out, and that's why perhaps changing the timeline as to what gets built first may have to happen, but in the end, that's a good thing. And that's pretty much it. That's really, I'll take any questions that you might have. The only last thing I said tonight is, obviously, I think we all know, we've heard, that they're preserving the existing, in the headquarters facility, they're preserving the entire original structure. I think in Athens, their big question is, how much of it is preserved versus how much of it, perhaps they take pieces of it, the stone, the beams, and use it in a newer structure, because it could be as much as a $2 million savings just on that one facility if you build new, looking almost exactly like the existing versus building the new around the existing. And that's a pretty big piece of change when we're talking tax dollars. So, and they're working through it. But one of the things that they, and to their credit, much to what the resident who mentioned the beam tonight, they've already identified, the archway, all that stone that's on the outside. And when I actually looked at just one quick potential of a brand new, I couldn't believe it was all brand new and not, because they used all the stone and the facing of the front, but it was a brand new building, so, and that's pretty much it. Any questions?
So the next thing that we can expect is maybe design.
Yeah, I think we'll see design, they're very close, and I know that, as you know, it's your neighbor, they've done a ton of work with that neighborhood, the neighbors are very happy. We had 2 meetings in the past week, 2 public meetings, which had less than minimal attendance. I think that's a good sign, especially, they've been so involved, and one of the things in East Milton that I really want to see happen is that, that they have such an open process there as well, because that's how you really get to something cheap. One of the things that I do like about where they're going with design, and you may have seen it on this, is that they really accented the green space that exists here now. And even though they touch a little bit of it, but they flip the parking to the other side of it, so that parking, it's gone. It's gone, so it's the station, and then a buffer of trees and green, and it was I was impressed with it. And there was a lot of input from the residents and the committee and the experts, so that's it.
Great. All right, thank you, Richard.
One question.
Oh, Mr.
sorry.
Frank.
Richard, what kind of attendance did those meetings get last week, the Monday and the Saturday?
So
Like
Saturday?
double digits?
No, 2 on Monday night,
Yeah,
two
two,
residents on
two.
Monday night. One who's been before. And Saturday, we had 2. One is prior fire chief, Chief Afanado, who has a real interest in the 6 million proposal. And the other was an attorney, who was actually Laura Kessel, who's here tonight, who's still worried that we're going to try and take the MAC. That was her main interest, so.
Gotcha.
That was it.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
Moving back to item 14, approval of the extended New Year's Eve hours. Have a motion on that?
So we've done 11. I'll make a go ahead, Katie, go ahead. The other, I didn't get to it.
I'll move that we approve the requests of Abbey Park, 550 Adams Street, and Navara, 556 Adams Street, to extend their hours of operation from 12 midnight until 1 a.m. on January 1st, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 15, approval of 2020 entertainment licenses.
I'll make a motion to approve the following 2020 entertainment license renewals. Milton's Opus DBA Steel and Rye at 95 Elliott Street. Welch Restaurant Management LLC DBA Abbey Park at 550 Adams Street. Wharf Street Restaurant Group LLC DBA Azul Mexican Grill 88 Wharf. 556 Adams Street LLC DBA Navarro 556 Adams Street. And Ho Chan Inc. DBA Mr. Chan's 534 Adams Street.
Second.
Just a question.
Ms.
So Wharf
Ms.
Street
Coe.
is doing business right now as Prime Pizza. It was at one time Azul.
Mm.
I-
Came right from Christine. so
Yeah, I'm wondering
apologize.
whether that's,
I'll
I
check
mean,
with
can
her.
we just, maybe I can just offer a friendly amendment to change it to doing business as Prime Pizza.
I was going to ask if there were 2 restaurants there now.
There's 2
because,
restaurants ago,
uh,
right? Azul?
Maybe.
I don't
I
even
know that as a
remember it.
former one.
Oh, yeah, it was for
was-
sure.
So
Yeah,
I-
it was.
Yeah, so
Short time.
I thought maybe it was new, okay.
All right, so we've got a friendly amendment to
Prime Pizza. Change
replace Azul Mexican Grill to
Prime
Prime
Pizza,
Pizza.
88 Wharf. I'll accept that.
Motion's been, or the friendly amendment has been seconded. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, item 16, future meeting dates. We're scheduled to meet on the 8th. On that day, we'll have a further public hearing on the Ice House 40B, January 22nd, February 12th, and February 26th. We're back on our second and fourth Wednesday schedule for February. Is everybody good with those dates, at least as far as you can see now? Good. Item 17.
Mr.
we have-
Chair, one more.
Oh, Mr. Denny.
Monday, do we have a quorum for Monday?
We
8:30?
do, I believe. I think we've got myself, Mr. Wells, Ms. Conlon.
Okay,
I'm-
so we'll have that
at
in the
least.
Chronicle?
8:30 Monday morning.
8:30 in the
Yeah.
Chronicle, okay.
Yeah.
In the
Thank
Chronicle?
you.
Got it.
Okay. Item 17, meeting minutes. I believe some of these minutes we have had amendments and comments. Is it on the July 17th and June 12th meetings we've had comments? And on the August 7, we have August 7th minutes as well. So, do we want to take these separately and see if we
I'd
can
make a
get...
motion to approve the meetings.
Can we do them separately?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, them all?
I have to
Okay.
abstain on one of them. I
Yes.
wasn't at one of
Which
them.
one do you
let's-
want to do? I'll do June 1st, June 12th, I mean. I'll make a motion to approve the meetings as amended and edited for June 12th, 2019.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended and edited from July 17th, 2019.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended and edited from August 7th, 2019.
I'll second it, but
Motion's been made and seconded?
You have to recuse
But-
yourself?
No, but I haven't had a chance to really go through them. So I feel as if I couldn't really vote in good conscience.
So
I'd
let's
like-
defer.
Have faith.
I'd like to
No, no,
defer.
Let's defer, let's
No,
defer.
and it's not that I don't have faith, it's just that I know it's part of my job.
Let's defer to
All
to
right,
the
so
to the
I'll,
next meeting.
Okay.
I'll recall that motion.
Sorry.
How's that?
All right, thank you, all right, that's good.
Okay, and I will look at them right away.
Item 18, discussion of May annual town meeting articles. We have, I think, some articles that we've received. We have some drafts of articles. This is just, purpose of this agenda item is to just have a general discussion and to highlight the fact that our warrant closing date is January 8th. So those that want to get articles in, need to get them in as quickly as possible. So we have some. We don't need to have a substantive discussion now of this, but I thought it was important just to put on the agenda because we need to get moving on this. So,
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Conlon.
I can just report that the first one about the investment of trust funds, the Finance Committee is working on that, so.
This is the prudent investor rule?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right.
Ian, Mr. Chair, on 11,
Yep. This is the fire station building committee?
Michael, Amy and I had a conversation this week. We wanted to follow up with town council on what had previously been told to us, is that we would not need a referendum vote. The opinion now is we will need a referendum.
Okay.
So if a project is approved at the town meeting in April, we would want to put that on. We wouldn't have a special, it would probably go on one of the fall, either the presidential or the other. One of those
The primary or
elections.
the,
Or
primary or the general?
Although I just heard the primary's in March, is that?
March.
That's our primary. But there's a state primary, there's something in September.
There's,
It'll be a
there
fall.
should be, there's going to be a state primary for the Senate. In fact, I think they set it in September.
Yeah, there's three
after-
elections this year, three.
We don't need to check now, but I'm pretty sure they set that primary close to Labor Day or after Labor Day. There was an issue that was in the Senate campaign, so I'm pretty sure there is a primary.
So if approved, we would want to put it on one of those.
So I have a
Ms.
question
Conlon.
relating to that. So, Richard, you said, because I know we had been told previously when we asked that we didn't need a referendum in order to create the fund, but
John.
what I understood was the referendum now would be, if there's a project, there'd be a 2.5 override question. Is that what you're referring to?
John and Kevin both believe that to utilize the money under Article 35, if a project is approved, that we need to go to the voters with it.
Okay,
Just
so
to
that's,
vote
so that
yes.
is different than what we
Yeah.
did. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you maybe
It
you were
is
talking
exactly
about
right.
a
It's totally different what we were told
Okay.
before. Their
Okay.
opinion now, because there's one line in there, and I didn't bring it with me, and Amy had concerns about it, because both Amy and perhaps bond counsel felt that if we were not, they wanted it in writing from town council. So Michael and I both said, let's go back to them with it again. So we went to Kevin this week, and actually Kevin brought John back and weighed in, and they both came back and said, we think you should go to the
I think we're going to
voters."
get a written opinion on that.
Oh, I
just to- yeah,
think it's
just
a
to-
good
yeah.
idea.
Okay.
Nobody said that.
Yeah, right.
He said that. It just, there's so many, I don't want the questions, the best thing to do is get it in writing.
Right.
Ms. Collins.
So there's, I don't know that we'll be able to get something together by January 8th, but Richard and our building commissioner, Joe Prondak, and I, and actually our new assistant planner, Allison Quinn,
Allison.
met to talk about short-term rentals, and Joe went and canvassed some colleagues in surrounding communities and found that nobody really is doing very much yet. And for that reason, he is concerned and would like some clarification about how we do intend to regulate these. Yes, so I've gotten in touch with Kevin, and he's looking to see if Mr. DeLuca may have had some experience with this, and there might be something, but I'm not promising anything. I just would like everybody to know that may be coming.
Okay.
So we have to meet with him as a group.
So the idea is we'll have him before us.
Eventually, yes. I think first, just to get him in the room with Joe and and a small group to really see, because one of the things that we're very concerned about are houses that are being used for promotional reasons and parties, and so that's already caused some concerns for neighbors and some disturbance, so.
All right. We have 3 potential articles from the planning board. One is the Milton Village mixed-use development, which we actually have a draft on that apparently has been voted by the planning board. So we could take up that now, but I think we probably should take these all at once, maybe on the 8th, unless people want to. Ms. Conlon.
I just had a question. Is the fact that there are planning board articles listed here, does that mean that we know that they're going forward? Like the associate member, I see that's back. Or is it just a carried over list from?
Carryover list.
Carried over list, okay.
You'll see others on the list that were carryovers that were
Yeah,
presented for potential special town meeting.
Number
but-
7 is also a planning board article.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Chair, on number 5, Jennifer McCullough did a lot of research on this last year. This was the electronic voting for this, over the summer for the October article, for the October meeting, which we didn't have. We put that off. I would be in favor of trying to move that forward. And I think
This is the electronic warrant delivery, number 6, you mean?
I'm sorry, yes,
Yep,
electronic warrant delivery, that's right. And, but I thought I thought we needed to maybe make the article itself a little bit more general, and maybe the detail would be in the recommendation. I think I had offered before, and if I did, I confess I haven't done anything more on this, to maybe work with Jennifer McCullough to see if we can get a draft that I think town council could help us to make it very, almost like we did with the special town administrator legislation, where we did a general article, should we take this action, and then the recommendations where all the detail was. I think we may want to take a similar approach there. But the research that was done is going to be helpful to the warrant committee. So I'd be interested in, unless anyone else would like to, maybe over the next couple of weeks, trying to see if we can
I'm good with
narrow that article and come up with a working draft.
I think that
I'm
would be
good
great.
with
Yeah. Okay. And then the last one that we haven't really mentioned is the electronic voting, and I guess well, actually, 2 we didn't. Electronic voting, which we'll look to our committee that asked us to withdraw it last time, and maybe they'll be ready to move forward this time. And then the one-day liquor licenses for the Milton Public Library, that'll probably come from the trustees of the library. So, okay, so we'll...
That's the first time, right? That hasn't been before.
No, I don't believe it has. So that's what we have at this point, and I guess we'll have a more fulsome discussion on January 8th as we try to get these articles ready to submit to the warrant committee. All right, if anything further on that?
Just one question. Did we say they're due by January 8th?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I mean, I think that we have some flexibility. We'd like to have them all on the
I
8th.
just
There's some
text
flexibility
that
if we need to.
The fire station building committee.
Yep. Anything else? All right. Item 19, discussion of the FY 2021 budget. Mr. Dennehy and perhaps our finance committee.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your attendance Monday night at the warrant committee. For those of you that didn't see it, school committee and administration had presented their packet. Chair Asher had asked if we had any preliminary numbers based on, obviously, we don't know where revenue numbers are coming in this time of year. But we did ask department heads and their boards and committees for 2 budgets this year. A level service budget, which is your FY20 budget, including any contractual obligations or collective bargaining agreements, escalations. And the second budget we asked for was that same level service budget minus 3%. Understanding that we had we are coming into FY21 with some financial burden based on mitigating some of the shortfalls we had for our FY20 budget. So we presented that to them. They had some very good dialogue, understanding that it was preliminary and that numbers were conservative. They are starting earlier this year, which I appreciate. They've been working diligently, getting us through special town meeting and all the articles that were presented there, and now they're on to the budget. So it was an active dialogue, an engaging group led by Chair Asher. So we're going to continue to work through that. There is a shortfall at this time, we anticipate, of anywhere from 1.9 to 2.7 million dollars, depending on where some of the Chapter 70 money comes in. But at this time, I think we're in that same pattern we have been in the last 2 fiscal years, where we're trying to chase a little bit this time of year. Tighten the belt is the phrase I used Monday night when we talked about it. And I think collectively, cooperatively, the Finance Committee from this board is going to meet with the School Finance Subcommittee on the 27th of December, and we're going to work our way through the process until we get some better, more refined numbers from the state. So.
Anything from the Finance Committee? I know you'll continue, I know you have meetings scheduled, and you'll be continuing to work with the Finance Committee, the Subcommittee, the School Committee as well on that. So.
I mean, unless Belinda thinks differently, I don't think there's anything more to add to what Mike has presented. No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Item 20, Town Administrator's Report. Back to Mr. Dennehy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Very quickly tonight, I think this is the last time publicly that I can thank Mary Ann Sullivan for her service in this building and for the aging population in our town for the last 25, 26 years. She will be, as we said during the interview process, very, very big shoes to fill. You will be missed. Hopefully you'll be coming through that door more often than not and participating in some of the programs that you helped develop in this building throughout the years. So I want to wish Mary Ann best of luck in her retirement. Welcome Christine Stanton to this building, who'll be starting right after the first of the year. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Jen McCullough for her 15 months as Executive Administrative Assistant to this board and the Town Administrator's Office. So thank you for all your work, Jen, as well.
Hear, hear.
I agree, on both parts.
She's moving about 20 feet to her right. She can run, but she can't hide. But no, thank you, Jen.
Okay. All right.
That's all.
Is
Yeah.
it? All right.
Thank
So
you.
it's on to me, the Chair's report. So a couple of things. One, Youth Task Force. The plan now, based on the fact that the entranceway has been fixed.
Upgraded.
Yes, thank you. We're looking at a January 6th opening of the Wildcat Den, which is the name that has been chosen by the middle schoolers for the youth center. And so we're looking to open on January 6th and then have a grand opening for the community on Saturday, February, it's either 1st or 2nd, whatever that Saturday is. And this will be
Vacation?
publicized. What's that?
Is that like the first day of vacation week?
I don't know, but it was chosen by the Youth Task Force to have a kind of a grand opening, probably between 1 and 3 on that Saturday. Mr. Denny?
February 1st.
February 1st, on that Saturday. So that's the current plan, opening on January 6th, and then the grand opening for the community on Saturday, February 1st. And then we also expect to have a presentation by the Traffic Mitigation Committee, probably January 8th, maybe January 22nd. January 8th is looking like a busy night, but we should be getting some substantive feedback from the Traffic Mitigation Committee in January. A draft report that we can have for comments, the community will have for comments, with the expectation that we get a final report sometime late January, early February. There are probably things that I am neglecting to mention, but that's all that my mind has right now. Ms. Collins?
No report.
Mr. Farrington?
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Ms. Conlon?
I don't really have a report, but I really want to echo what Mike Dennehy said, is to congratulate and to thank Mary Ann Sullivan for so many years of service and for all that she's done for the seniors in town, and certainly had a big impact here. And I also want to congratulate Christine and Jen for their respective new roles. Looking forward to working with both of them in those capacities.
I echo those sentiments, very much so, and both parts. And I also want to thank my colleague, Mrs. Collins, and Jen for putting this together, and the 11 employees who came on Monday night to my brother's keeper. And for each of you, and it was echoed to me again in Town Hall today, it's a very special place. MBK will bring Christmas to 14,000 residents, including many in this community, over the next few weeks. And I know they went there with the idea that, as I said, that they were going to wrap presidents, but what they engaged in was much more than that, was that you actually go in, and we were assigned 2 very large families. And they shopped, picked, wrapped, tagged, and scheduled for delivery for both those families, which is a very personal thing because you make Christmas happen. And I think one of the things that they were also taken back was the number of Milton people that they saw there working. There were some people very well known, especially on this board here, someone very well known to us. Came walking in the door with his heavy coat on. He runs deliveries every day to people's houses. So it's a very special place to me, and I thank a resident, Denise Quealy, for bringing me there the first time, and I thank you very much, and I think it's something we will do again next year.
Well, thank you, yes. I think anyone who can do that next year.
Thank you for bringing that crock pot here.
Would be very, very happy. I had someone say to me today who went that it was a unique and special way to get to know other staff who he wouldn't have met otherwise. So I thought that was really wonderful.
And as is always done at MBK there, we didn't get to stay because we were at the end, is that we all went to eat together when it was done. So there's a lot to be said about that. So I'm very grateful to everyone for doing that, especially you two.
And thank you for putting it together. Richard
No,
put all of that together. And
you knew I wanted to do it.
Right.
I really wanted to do it, so I was glad to do it.
Great, thank you, thank you. All right, public comment response, there was no public comment, so there's no response. Future agenda items, we've had a running list, and is there anything other than has been listed that any of the members want to mention, to include on the list?
No, just that what I said to you earlier is that on January 8th, that I think it would really be beneficial to everyone to have the developer here, if we have another hearing, to present, a concept. Like, as Joe Sloan said, okay, now we have a developer, put it up on the screen and let's talk about it.
Actually, go ahead.
Maybe the animal shelter.
Animal shelter, yes.
Bring them in for an update.
Yep.
Great.
That's a good idea. So
They're close.
We may do that, because the 8th is packed, we may do that on the 22nd.
Yeah.
they'll have more information on the
Next.
22nd. Yeah, I think the RFP is going to be ready next week.
That's what Bill-
So, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Melinda?
So, last year, I think, Katie had brought up some points about the Governor Stoughton Trust and revisiting it and making sure that the policies that we have about unexpendable capital and things like that, that they're where we want them to be. And we haven't revisited that, and I'd like to do that, or at least come up with a plan of how to do that. Maybe the next stop is town council, I'm not sure. But I've reread it several times since then, and I would like to address it.
Should we do that through, Mr. Chairman, should we do that through the Finance Committee? Because I know that we were talking about that early, and then we, last year switched to financial
Right.
policies and then the
Right, there's
budget, and
so
now we're
much.
into the
Right.
budget again, so it's not, hasn't been priority recently. But we did start working on that.
If the Finance Committee has started and is willing, I think that's a great place for it.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, great. Community happenings. I don't have anything listed, and again, my...
Christmas is next week.
Yeah, I know, I think that's probably right. Is there anything that we're missing? No? All right. If anything comes up, we'll try to get the word out. So, item 26, we have to go back into executive session as the Select Board. So, I'll make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, believing that a discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the board, and the board will not return to open session to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
All right, we will adjourn to executive session, not to return. We will see you again on January 8th. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and our best to all. Thank you.